May there be auspicious wellness for all. May there be peace and tranquility for all. May there be sacred wholeness in all. May there be auspicious welfare for all.
As well. So namaste to all of you. Thank you for your attention. So we are going to recapitulate the ground covered in the second satsang. So first of all, we spoke about the 4 portals through which people can come into the field of Amanaska Yoga. First is the lot of mumukshus and yogis and seekers who, because of a past life samskara, they've got a yearning and a seeking. And they inevitably go behind the truth, and they say that they want to know the divine, and they want peace, and therefore they're on the journey. That is category 1. And this may befall in the marital sphere, in the professional sphere, in the sphere of health, in the sphere of relationship, in the sphere of family relationship, and so on. It can happen in any sphere. So that is a second category. And the third is people who have crossed the milestone of 60 or 65 years of age, and then who kind of had their fair share of fulfillment in the material spheres of life called artha and kama. And so now a completely new trend in thinking and feeling begins for them. And they ask questions which they never asked in the earlier years of their life. And they want to know the very meaning and the purpose of life, because they sense a loss of meaning and a loss of purpose. And so they want to, so something is pushing them and something is inviting them to explore the unfinished agenda of life. And they are senior citizens. So there's the third category. And the fourth category is people who are spiritually evolved and who are very mature, and you've already awakened to sorrow in life. They're not denying sorrow, they're awakened to sorrow, and therefore they're prepared to give the years to listen to the truth. That's the fourth category. And while these are 4 broad categories, as I said last time, there are million paths for million seekers, and everybody can come to the threshold of the divine through a path which is unique for him, and which is not a massified path on which millions are walking. No, the path is only for him. And therefore one has to be aware that one's path is different from the path for other people in general. So these are the 4 categories. Then in order to give you some material for you to think, I cited a sloka from the Bhagavad Gita, which says that there are 4 kinds of seekers. And I asked you to consider yourself in which category you actually fall. Whether you are an intellectually curious seeker, or whether you're the distressed and the depressed category, or whether you're fundamentally a wealth seeker, but you're now seeking the helping hand of the divine in order to augment your wealth. That's one category. And then fourthly, do you belong to the category of very wise people who have got an innate attraction to the divine and who want to sacrifice and devote their life to the divine? Are you in that box? So I asked you to do an examination of your life honestly and find out for yourself where you stand. And I said that could be the very beginning of self-knowing in broad terms. Then we went into dharma, artha, moksha, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, which are the 4 goals in traditional Hindu society. But now I'm saying in the third satsang that whatever we said about the 4 goals of life, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, which were valid and legitimate in traditional Hindu society, they're equally valid and equally legitimate in every religious society, whether it's the Christian society, whether it's the Islamic society, or whether it's the Buddhist society. Irrespective of what your religion is, this applies to all the religious societies. And then in sharp contrast to that, we said that in modern secular society, that the pursuit of dharma, artha, kama, moksha have suffered an aberration. That's what we said, and which might be seen and perceived as something very disturbing, but the intention is not certainly to disturb you, but just to let you know what the view of the seers is, of the rishis and the sages of India. What is their view? And their view is that modern secular society has got an aberrant formulation of artha and kama, dharma and moksha. So I covered all this, and then I also touched on divine architecture, divine conspiracy, and divine patronage. And then we answered a whole lot of questions in the second satsang. And so having covered the background, now we are stepping into the third satsang. Now, first of all, I want to say something about the etymology of the word satsang. Now, this is a very haloed traditional term in Hindu society, and all Western seekers are very familiar with the etymology of satsang. Sat means truth or absolute reality, and sangha means association. So you associate with truth in any form, or you associate with a whole lot of people who are pursuing the truth, who are pursuing the divine, and who are pursuing peace and so on. But because we are in a completely new approach to spiritual reality, I want to give a new meaning to the word satsang. And I say that sat not only is absolute reality, sat is also reality. It's a new meaning I'm giving. It's not there in the tradition. And reality means our life as it is. So it's not what we think of it. We may think of it in certain terms, but it is not that, but the reality is something else. And the Master Krishnamurti uses the term what is to describe that reality. So what is a part of Krishnamurtian vocabulary. It means what actually is. So for example, what actually is could be jealousy. It could be enmity in relationship. It can be conflict in relationship. All that is what is. And that is the face of Sat in our lives to begin with. So Sat is not absolute reality, which is terra incognito for us. So we dare not speak about it. We are not mature enough. We are not there yet. So we are going to speak about reality as we are experiencing it. And that reality is the what is. So in this satsang, we are going to come face to face with the what is, which is a new kind of forgotten reality, a reality which has been glossed over in the tradition. And therefore, we are going to remind ourselves that it has been brushed aside, it has been glossed over, and therefore we are going to pick up those threads which have been discarded. So that's the meaning of satsang. So we deal with that forgotten reality. We deal with that brushed aside reality. And satsang means a group of people discussing these problems and these issues. And then there's a new adjective here, Amanaska and Amanaska Yoga, and yoga is the noun. And what do we mean by this? Now, the particle a in Sanskrit, it's a particle of negation, it's a prefix, it comes before a noun or an adjective. And Amanaska means negation of the mind. Manas is consciousness. Consciousness meaning everything which is vibrant, everything which is active, and everything which is moving. And Amanaska means for the shutting down of the mind, for the negation of the mind, for the quieting down of the mind. So that is Amanaska. So Amanaska Yoga is that yoga. By yoga we mean meditation here. That yoga which kind of calms the mind, shuts down the mind, makes the mind vacant, so that a deeper reality which is hidden may be revealed to us as our true nature. So that's the meaning, etymological meaning of Amanaska Yoga. And now this Amanaska Yoga, very importantly, is not another system of new meditation to which a seeking self can latch on in the hope that it is going to gain something from it. Now, the problem with the self is that whatever you speak to the self immediately wants to pursue that, wants to go behind it in order to gain something from it, in order to enrich itself. So this Amanaska Yoga is not to fatten the self, not to kind of make the self very secure. No, on the contrary, this Amanaska Yoga is for enabling us to understand the birth and the life of that self, how that self is born, and how that self is the breeder of illusion, is the breeder of suffering, and how it is possible to void that self and to bring the life of that self to a finale. The whole thing is Amanaska Yoga. So we got to remember that, and let us move forward from there. And I've got to, because I'm talking about dharma and moksha, I need to be very honest, and I need to be very authentic, and I need to tell you why I'm using certain terms and from where I got those terms. I cannot and should not give you the impression that this is my creation. No, there is something which is definitely my creation, but I'll come to that. Now, I first encountered the term Amanaska Yoga in an Indian scripture on Advaita, but it was not in Sanskrit. It was written in the South Indian language called Telugu. And the author of that work is called Lingamurti Gurumurti, and he lived between 1720 and 1817. And while writing that book, he made it abundantly clear that he is drawing upon more ancient material from the Brahmanda Purana of the Hindu scriptures, which goes back to the 4th century before the Christian era, 4th century BCE. And what does the Brahmanda Purana deal with in that text? It is basically describing the teaching of the avatar, Lord Rama, given to Anjaneya, who is a general representative of a mumukshu who wants to be emancipated, who's asking for the final truth. So Lord Rama gives the teaching, the Advaitic teaching, to Anjaneya, and the book is called Sita Ramanjaneya Samvadam. Samvada means dialogue or conversation between three people, the Lord Rama and his consort Sita, and then Anjaneya, who is his dasa or servitor. So the three people discuss the philosophy, discuss the teaching, and then it finally leads to the emancipation of Anjaneya. So Sita Ramanjaneya Samvadam, and then going back to Brahmanda Purana. So that is my source. And because I was exposed to it in the year 1972-73, far back, many decades ago. And then there is also in the Advaita literature of India, you will find that Amanaska Yoga is also a name to an ancient Hindu scripture, which is in the form of a conversation or a dialogue. Now you will find this very often. The Hindu scriptures are always in the form of dialogues and conversations between a teacher and a student or a disciple who is learning. And this particular dialogue is between Shiva Mahadeva, whom the Christians call Father in heaven. And then one of the sages, his name is Vamadeva. So he's a sage, so we call him Rishi Vamadeva. So the Rishi and Shiva Mahadeva are talking or dialoguing, they're discoursing, and to enable Vamadeva to come upon the truth. And that text, which is in Sanskrit, is also called Amanaska Yoga. But though I took the name from the Telugu Advaita text, I'll have to tell you more about Amanaska Yoga. So let us move on and go to the next slide. Now, Amanaska Yoga, honestly, is my understanding and assimilation of the world teacher J. Krishnamurti's lifetime teachings. Now, I want to stress on the fact that when you internalize a certain teaching, then the teaching explodes inside you. It explodes inside, but you've got to be 100% honest, because the way you understand and the way you assimilate will be different from the way another seeker and another mumukshu understands and assimilates. So your assimilation understanding has to be original, and somebody else's understanding and assimilation will also have to be original. And for that to be so, for that to be original, it's very important for you to set aside authority. Because so long as you are, the yoke of authority is on your shoulders, you can make absolutely no discovery. You will only be a petty believer, and you will be a petty follower, and which is not good enough, because that is just the kindergarten of the spiritual life. It's not good enough. You got to go way beyond that. So in order to go way beyond that, you've got to be true to yourself. And you've got to, and in order to be true to yourself, you've got to throw off the yoke of authority. So long as you keep that authority, you will not be able to come upon anything original. Now, this understanding which I'm presenting to you, I call this Amanaska Yoga. And you may ask, why a separate name? Now, it's rather unfortunate that we have to use a separate name, because knowledge, as it becomes deeper and deeper, like a river, one river branches and it becomes 5 rivers. So a differentiation of cells happens. So everything has to be kind of customized and has to be fitted to the individual where the realization happens. Now, when you look at the Upanishads and you look at the Bhagavad Gita and you look at the Brahma Sutras, now there are hundreds of commentators, sages, thinkers, philosophers who are attempting to understand these scriptures, and everyone brings his own understanding, brings his own assimilation. So they are very original, but then they are different from each other. For example, there are 108 Upanishads in India, and if you see, every Upanishad is not necessarily in agreement with every other Upanishad. It's a different approach to reality. It's a different way of understanding reality. So that is the approach of that particular sage or that particular philosopher. So a separate name is inevitable. And you find the same thing in the Christian tradition of the prophets of the Old Testament. There are so many prophets, and every prophet's understanding is original, is different. And if you take the Bhagavad Gita, for example, then you find that one commentator who is a doctor, a physician, he has called his understanding of Bhagavad Gita, he has given the name Tattvamasi. It is in 2 volumes. That is his bhashya, his commentary, his understanding. It's called Tattvamasi, and Tattvamasi means you are one with the divine. And that's the ultimate goal, and you've got to grasp it. And according to him, the teaching of the Gita is just to drive home that final realization of Tattvamasi. And another commentator, very learned and very great commentator, he has called his work Tattva Vivechani. That is, Tattva means ultimate truth. Vivechani is discourse on the ultimate truth. The grasping, the discourse, and understanding of the ultimate truth. And another commentator, very learned commentator, has given it a different name, Gitartha Sangraha. That is, the meaning of the Gita, the essence of the Gita, all gathered together in one comprehensive, unified bundle, Gitartha Sangraha. So different teachers and different philosophers have always approached the eternal truth of the scriptures according to their own understanding. And if they are scrupulous and if they are 100% honest, then their understanding may not agree with somebody else's understanding, and they must have the courage of their convictions. They must have the clarity to walk on that road alone. And that's what I have been doing, and that is what I am doing. And I believe that that must be shared with everybody, which is why I'm now talking. So let's go further on that road. So now I come to the master, Krishnamurti. And as I said, this teaching is the assimilation of the master Krishnamurti's lifetime work. Now, very briefly, I was introduced to this great world teacher, J. Krishnamurti, by my mother and by my guru, Sri Bhagavan, way back in the late 60s. In the late 60s, when I was about 20 years old. And it's taken a long time to complete the whole process of assimilation. And so because it's now complete and almost 5 decades have passed, now I'm sharing it with the world, what the journey has been. And so let me begin with a few salient features of J. Krishnamurti, Jiddu Krishnamurti. Now, he was born in Madanapalli, which is about 250 kilometers northwest of the southern city of Chennai in India. And he was born on May 12th at 30 minutes past midnight on May 12th, according to the English calendar, in the year 1895. Now, it's very significant for us, and we will have occasion to come back to this later in our deeper considerations, that Krishnamurti was the 8th child to his mother, Sanjeevamma, and his mother was a mother of 11 children, but some of them passed away, infant mortality. And but Krishnamurti was the 8th child, and she was a devotee of Bhagavan Krishna of the Hindu world. And she had a very strong premonition that this child whom she was going to deliver, the 8th child, was very special. And so she made a very unusual petition to her husband and family that she wants to deliver this child in the puja room. That is a shrine room, which is devoted for prayer and meditation, which is not open at night and which is closed at night, and nobody goes into the puja room before bathing in the morning. But Sanjeevamma's petition to the family and the husband was that she should deliver this baby in the puja room. And so it happened, because it was her premonition that this child is going to be someone extraordinary and somebody spiritual. So Krishnamurti was delivered in that way, which is a very unusual occurrence. And then Krishnamurti and his 4 brothers and father and mother, they moved to the Theosophical Society, and they settled outside the compound of the Theosophical Society, which was about 250 acres. And that was around, Krishnamurti was born in 1895, and they came there and settled around 1901, if my memory serves me correctly. And there, when Krishnamurti was born, they consulted an astrologer, and the astrologer, he is called Kumara Shrautulu, and it is mentioned in Mary Lutyens's biography of Krishnamurti in the volume Krishnamurti, The Years of Awakening. It is mentioned that the astrologer had made a very definitive prediction to the father that this child, this particular child, the eighth child, was destined to be a very great man. And so every time the astrologer had an occasion to meet with Krishnamurti's father, he will always ask, but how is that boy Krishna? What is he doing? He always had his eyes on him because his prediction was that he was destined for much greatness in life. And when Krishnamurti was around 14 years, then Bishop Charles Leadbeater of the Theosophical Society, Annie Besant and Charles Leadbeater were the second line of leaders of the international movement of Theosophy. And he one day noticed Krishnamurti and his brother on the Adayar beach, where Krishnamurti and his brother used to go in the evenings. And his brother was very brainy and very smart, but Krishnamurti, the boy, always looked dreamy and very vague. But Bishop Leadbeater noticed something extraordinary the moment his eyes fell on the boy Krishnamurti. And immediately he told his people who are working with him, like Ernest Wood and a couple of other people, like Shivarao and like Subramanyam Iyer, they were all working very closely with Bishop Charles Leadbeater, that this boy's aura does not have a single particle of selfishness. So it is very well known that Leadbeater was a clairvoyant, that is, one who can see very clearly, one who can perceive very clearly. That's a French word, but that means he's a seer. He can see certain things very clearly. And so he saw that Krishnamurti was special and extraordinary. And then by that time, already the founder, Madame Blavatsky, and then after her, Annie Besant, they made very prophetic statements that the Theosophical movement was all about preparing for the coming of the world teacher. So it was a worldwide organization, and then they were saying, but they do not know who that human being is going to be, who is going to be, whose body is going to be taken over by the world teacher. And but that was their ideology, that was their belief, and that belief was very strong among the founding fathers of the Theosophical Society. The first line of founding fathers, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, a Russian psychic lady, and Colonel Olcott, who was an American, who was in the Civil War in America, and who was a journalist, and who was an educated lawyer. And these two people, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky and Colonel Olcott, they founded the Theosophical Society in 1875, sometime in November in New York City. And that is the seed. And even when they founded the Theosophical Society, international organization, they did not know what was to come. But the intention is the important thing. And the intention was fiery. It was burning brightly. And that is the only thing which seems to have mattered. So now you can see the founding fathers, and let us move forward. And okay. So thank you, Madhuji, for that. And then Krishnamurti's awakening came when he was 27 years old. It's called the Pepper Tree Experience in Ojai, California. And it is described again in Krishnamurti's biography. And then Krishnamurti had a very hard time fitting into the role of the world teacher. They were telling him that he's a messiah, and that the Lord Maitreya, who is supposed to live in the Himalayas, he is going to occupy his body, and his body and his consciousness is the vehicle for Lord Maitreya, and that he is the world teacher to come. And Krishnamurti, it was finding it too difficult a thing for him. So Krishnamurti had to digest this enormous responsibility of being a world teacher. And initially he felt that he is not ready for it. And then he found too much of materialism in the Theosophical Society, too much of material paraphernalia, too much of hierarchical structure. You're first, I'm second, somebody else is third, and other people are unevolved, and so on. And so Krishnamurti did something which in human religious history, no other religious teacher has done. What did he do? He dissolved a worldwide organization called the Order of the Star in the East, and it had a worldwide membership of 3,000 people, and the 3,000 people were listening to him in 1929 on August 2nd in Holland, in a certain spiritual camp, a retreat camp called Oman. And then Krishnamurti, all the 3,000 are present, and on that occasion, very momentous occasion, very momentous talk, Krishnamurti dissolves the international organization. And we are going to have glimpses into what Krishnamurti said and what is Krishnamurti's viewpoint and why he dissolved it. And then not only the 3,000 people were there, and Krishnamurti's talk was also broadcast on Radio Holland. So the whole nation was listening to it. And it was a very Ketuvian, what a Vedic astrologer will describe as a very Ketuvian act of negation. And the whole of the Hindu spiritual tradition is neti, negation. Negation of everything that is false. And so Krishnamurti began with this negation. And all through life, that negation has been part of his teaching. That neti, not this. And so from many points of view, Krishnamurti was extraordinary. Krishnamurti was original. And here you see a very extraordinary setting on the southern bank of the Adayar River, which flows in Chennai. It goes into the sea, the Bay of Bengal. And you see a huge structure which was purchased by the visionaries, Madame Blavatsky and Colonel Henry Steele Olcott. They purchased 27 acres because of their magnificent vision in 1882. Now they were great men. They were visionaries. They were masters in their own right. And because something has gone wrong in that mission, we dare not be skeptical, and we dare not condemn them like the way history has condemned them. At least there's partial condemnation, and we should not do that because we are looking at their work much later in time. Almost 100 years later, we are looking at their work. And when we look at their work 100 years later, we don't see the taints so significant. So they purchased 27 acres, and finally they bought more and more, and it became an estate of 250 acres. And it was originally called Huddlestone's Gardens. That's the name. The buildings. I showed you the building, and there's a building on the left side. It's called the Octagonal Bungalow. It's Octagonal Bungalow. And Krishnamurti and his brother, Nityanand, they received lessons in English, in history, and about the spiritual life from Bishop Leadbeater and other teachers in that Octagonal Bungalow. And in that Octagonal Bungalow, the seer, clairvoyant, Leadbeater, he was able to extract 30 past lives of Krishnamurti. And Krishnamurti, the thread which runs through the 30 past lives, he was given a certain name, and that name was Alcyone. Alcyone is the name. That's the correct pronunciation. It's a very bright star in the zodiacal sign Taurus, and Krishnamurti was given that name, that series of 30 past lives. And then it carried with it a belief in the masters, the master Kuthumi, who was supposed to be a Kashmiri Brahmin, and the master Moraya, who was supposed to be a Rajput king, and the master Maitreya, who is supposed to be of Celtic origin in Ireland and in England and Middle Europe. And so these masters were supposed to be living in Tibet. Now it's a belief which the Theosophists had. And if you go deep enough and far enough into any belief, then that belief will manifest into reality. And therefore, we have got to be very careful when dealing with a belief. If it's a shallow belief, it's worthless. But where the belief has entered into the heart and it has possessed you and has become your intellectual conviction, then that belief can very well be the face of truth. So we're not going very deeply. And here you see Leadbeater, Bishop Leadbeater, and Krishnamurti with Annie Besant, who was his adopted, the mother, and Krishnamurti was the adopted son. And Krishnamurti had Himalayan responsibility, and Krishnamurti finally extricated himself from that confusion, from that responsibility, and he declared himself to be a solitary teacher, no disciples, no spiritual empire, no future. And that's the great teacher that he is. Therefore, there's no teacher like him in world history. And if you want to know more about him, then you must go to the biographies of Krishnamurti and the Krishnamurti literature and the literature of the Theosophical Society, which is very abundant. Abundant literature of the Theosophical Society. So now you see Krishnamurti, he is on August 2nd, 1927, he is dissolving, he is negating all spiritual authority, because so long as you have spiritual authority, you cannot actually flower, but you can have solace. Like a small infant needs a mother, needs a father, because the infant is not grown up yet. The infant is not mature enough yet to stand on his own feet. So he needs to cling to the mother, he needs to cling to the father, because it is still the period of infancy. So in the initial stages, that anchorage to an authority figure like a guru and a god is very necessary. But as the journey advances and moves forward, then Krishnamurti's whole point was that that authority becomes a handicap and becomes an obstruction to the further unfoldment of the truth. That is Krishnamurti's discovery, that is Krishnamurti's perception, that is central to Krishnamurti's lifetime work. So, Madhuji, we will play this audio file, and the audio file has been taken from Mary Lutens's work, Krishnamurti, The Years of Awakening. So please play it, and we will listen.
Krishnamurti pointed out the paramount importance of not depending on spiritual and religious authorities. This is his talk on August 2nd, 1927, from the work by Mary Lutens, Krishnamurti, The Years of Awakening, page 250. Open quotes. Until now, you have been depending on the two protectors of the order, Mrs. Annie Besant and Leadbeater, for authority, on someone else to tell you the truth, whereas the truth lies within you. In your own hearts, in your own experience, you will find the truth. And that is the only thing of value. My purpose is not to create discussions on authority, on the manifestations in the personality of Krishnamurti, but to give the waters that shall wash away your sorrows, your petty tyrannies, your limitations, so that you will be free, so that you will eventually join that ocean where there is no limitation, where there is the beloved. Does it really matter out of what glass you drink the water, so long as that water is able to quench your thirst? I have been united with my beloved, and my beloved and I will wander together the face of the earth. It is no good asking me who is the beloved. Of what use is its explanation? For you will not understand the beloved until you are able to see him in every animal, in every blade of grass, in every person that is suffering, in every individual. Close quotes.
So that is the view of Krishnamurti. And then Krishnamurti, now we are going to go to August 2nd, 1929. We are in Holland, Omen camp, and Krishnamurti was given, he was the leader of a worldwide spiritual movement and 3,000 very influential people. And Krishnamurti dissolved that order, and he had the integrity and the honesty to return 5,000 acres back, because a castle was given to him in Holland, the castle Erede, and Krishnamurti gave it back. And because he did not want that organization, because he found that that organization itself was crippling inward flowering. Instead of enabling inward flowering, that very organization was a hindrance, and people were getting stuck with outer trivialities connected to the organization, which is why Krishnamurti said, now it is time we tear it down. And so typical Ketuvian act of negation, for which India is so known. So Ketu is known for self-abnegation. So wherever the self is, the self has to be routed from there. The self has to be driven out from there. That is the essence of the spiritual life. And here you see Krishnamurti addressing 3,000 people, and it's going on radio. And he's telling why, as the head of that organization, now he's winding up that organization. He's not creating that organization. He's winding up that organization. So this is a very unusual event in the religious history of mankind. So we have to pay very close attention. Fortunately, every word of Krishnamurti is available for us to contemplate. So let us give our hearts and minds to this audio file, which is about 6.5 minutes.
Krishnamurti dissolves the worldwide organization called the Order of the Star in the East. This happened on August 2nd, 1929 at the Omen camp in Holland. 3,000 people were in the camp. The organization had a worldwide membership of 3,000. He was the head of that organization. This is taken from the work Krishnamurti, The Years of Awakening by Mary Lutyens, pages 274-275. Open quotes. You have listened to me for 3 years now, without any change taking place except in the few. Now analyze what I am saying. Be critical, so that you may understand thoroughly, fundamentally. For 18 years, you have been preparing for this event, for the coming of the world teacher. For 18 years, you have organized, you have looked for someone who would give you a new delight to your hearts and minds, who would transform your whole life, who would give you a new understanding, for someone who would raise you to a new plane of life, who would give you new encouragement, who would set you free. And now, look what's happening. Consider, reason with yourselves, and discover in what way that belief has made you different. Not with a superficial difference of the wearing of a badge which is trivial, absurd? In what manner has such a belief swept away all unessential things of life? That is the only way to judge. In what way are you freer, greater, more dangerous to every society which is based on the false and the unessential? In what way have the members of this organization of the star become different? You are all depending for your spirituality on someone else, for your happiness on someone else, for your enlightenment on someone else. When I say, look within yourselves for the enlightenment, for the glory, for the purification, and for the incorruptibility of the self, not one of you is willing to do it. There may be a few, but very, very few. So, why have an organization? No man from outside can make you free, nor can organized worship, nor the immolation of yourselves for a cause make you free, nor can forming yourselves into an organization, nor throwing yourselves into work make you free. You use a typewriter to write letters, but you do not put it on an altar and worship it. But that is what you are doing when organizations become your chief concern. How many members are there in it? That is the first question I am asked by all newspaper reporters. How many followers have you? By their number we shall judge whether what you say is true or false. I do not know how many there are. I am not concerned with that. If there even was one man who has been set free, that were enough. Again, you have the idea that only certain people hold the key to the kingdom of happiness. No one holds it. No one has the authority to hold that key. That key is your own self. And in the development and the purification and the incorruptibility of that self alone is the kingdom of eternity. You have been accustomed to being told how far you have advanced, what is your spiritual status. How childish! Who but yourself can tell you if you are incorruptible? But those who really desire to understand, who are looking to find that which is eternal without a beginning and without an end, will walk together with greater intensity, will be a danger to everything that is unessential, to unrealities, to shadows. And they will concentrate. They will become the flame because they understand. Such a body we must create, and that is my purpose. Because of that true friendship, which you do not seem to know, there will be real cooperation on the part of each one. And this not because of authority, not because of salvation, but because you really understand and hence are capable of living in the eternal. This is a greater thing than all pleasure, than all sacrifice. So, those are some of the reasons why, after careful consideration for 2 years, I have made this decision. It is not from a momentary impulse. I have not been persuaded to it by anyone. I am not persuaded in such things. For 2 years I have been thinking about this, slowly, carefully, patiently, and I have now decided to disband the order as I happen to be its head. You can form other organizations and expect someone else. With that I am not concerned, nor with the creating new cages, new decorations for those cages. My only concern is to set men absolutely, unconditionally free. Close quotes.
So that was the so that is the general tenor of Krishnamurti. And now if you look at his whole life, then you will see certain hallmarks. And the hallmark is that what he spoke about, the essence of his, the essence of the teaching, which is on self-knowing, it is not there in the religious traditions of Hinduism or Buddhism, of Christianity and the other religions. It's not there. It's something which is very new. So I say that the self-knowing is a paradigm shift in the religions and in the religious sphere. Now, a paradigm shift is something which is completely radical. The change is radical, and the change is not small. The change is Himalayan change, and the old logic and the old approach has no place in self-knowing. So such a thing happened actually in the sciences. Newtonian mechanics did not apply to atoms and molecules, and a quantum theory had to be developed. And the concepts and the quantum understanding of very small particles, microscopic particles, that's called quantum mechanics and quantum theory. Now, that's a paradigm shift from classical mechanics. So a completely new kind of thinking, a completely new kind of understanding, radically different. And in the same way, Krishnamurti's self-knowing is a radical change, a very momentous change, which has happened in the religious sphere. And it is bound to percolate into all the religions, but it may take time. But when it percolates and how it percolates will depend on how responsible people are who have understood and assimilated Krishnamurti, to what extent they share the truth they have realized. On that will depend to what extent the new culture of self-knowing will make inroads into the lives of people, and through the lives of the people, it will also become integrated with the religious traditions. Now, Krishnamurti, among other things, he also said that he is not a guru, because he found that the institution of the guru is rather tainted in the world and in India. So Krishnamurti denied and did not want people to treat him like a guru. And he said, work on yourselves, be more responsible. And he did not create disciples. There are no successors for him. There are no spiritual ashrams for him, and no spiritual empire, no empire of wealth, and there is no wealth accumulation. There are no businesses which create wealth for that spiritual empire, and no family anchorage. Krishnamurti was the seer who walked alone. So Krishnamurti was separated from the family, was separated. The mother died when he was 10 years old. And relationship with the father was very difficult, because Annie Besant and Leadbeater took away Krishnamurti from the family. So the father filed a court case, and so Krishnamurti was all alone, and he is the seer who walks alone. So that is a very different kind of life than what we usually see. And the teaching has come from the travails in Krishnamurti's life. So you can see how Krishnamurti has impacted on leading thinkers of his time. For example, George Bernard Shaw, the Irish playwright and political activist, 1925 Nobel laureate in literature, he said, Krishnamurti is a religious teacher of the greatest distinction, who is listened to with profit Now with profit means with benefit. Listen to with benefit and assent by members of all churches and sects. Because what Krishnamurti was talking was actually meta-religious. And religion having its own purview of the organized domain, and Krishnamurti was not in the domain. He was completely beyond it. And look at what Khalil Gibran has said, Lebanese and American philosopher and writer. He said, when he entered my room, I said to myself, surely the Lord of love has come. And look at the words of Aldous Huxley, English author, philosopher. Hearing Krishnamurti speak was like listening to a discourse of the Buddha, such power, such intrinsic authority. And Joseph Campbell, one of the greatest and the tallest figures in mythology in the world, and known through his works, The Masks of God, Krishnamurti gave me a great deal to think about and set me on a quest for something which I scarcely understood. So that is the paradigm shift. It is so new, it is so radical that you will take some time to understand and to assimilate it, because it's so new. The thinking, the viewpoint is so new, so radical. And you can see Krishnamurti discussing with David Bohm and Professor David Bohm saying that because Professor David Bohm had a very good relationship with Einstein, with whom he used to discuss many of his theories. One of his theories was called hidden variable theory. It's a research dimension of quantum theory. And he said that, like Einstein, Krishnamurti was so intense in relationship, so intensely listening like Einstein, and absolutely no barrier at all between himself and the whoever is speaking to him. And so that kind of energy he felt from Krishnamurti, which he felt from the great master Albert Einstein. So Krishnamurti impacted greatly on all the original thinkers of his time, and therefore, but the teachings being esoteric, I don't think the teachings, the full significance of the teachings have come home. So which is why I began this work rather late in my life. So I try to give you, a rounded picture, very brief, as to who is this great world teacher, which the Theosophical Society discovered, and what is the teaching about. The teaching is all about self-knowing, and now we have to go into the teaching. Now I said something little bit about his life and something little bit about the man and the philosopher, and we're yet to go into the teaching. So I don't know if we should, Donji and Madhuji, do we open for questions?
I'd actually like to start with a question. Anjana asked, what is the difference, and this backs up to us last week as well as this week, what is the difference between karma, fate, and free will? Is there no escape from past misdeeds? The Old Testament speaks of a punishing God, but according to the New Testament, he is supposed to be merciful and compassionate. Ramana Maharishi says fate is all-encompassing and suffering is the only way. Is there no other way?
Okay, this is a very good question and very old question, which people are asking in most satsangs. And we have got to approach this question with not with confidence, but with some hesitation. And because the way people use words is different, and we do not even know if Anjana Ramnath is quoting correctly from Maharshi. Hopefully she is quoting correctly. So karma, let us take karma first. Now, Karma is a Sanskrit word which has an enfolded meaning in it, and it is cause and effect. So you do something, you sow a seed, and then you reap a harvest. You sow a seed and you reap a harvest. Now, that whole classical interpretation of karma is, you got to be very careful, because we, a certain implied meaning is there. It's understood that you are the body, but then the fact that you are the body is an illusion. That's not actually true. So through these hands and through this mouth and through this tongue and through this brain, some words are spoken and some actions are sent out into the world. But we really don't know who is the agent. Who you are, we don't know. We've got to crack that puzzle. And then we find that we have to suffer often in life, and we get our share of suffering. And then we try to link that suffering which we have got, and we think it's a kind of nemesis, we think it's a kind of retribution, and we want to tie it to either what we did in the present life or what we did in a previous life. So the whole logic of karma carries with it an assumption that you know who you are. But the problem is that you do not know who you are. You've got to crack that puzzle. And the puzzle and the cracking of that puzzle is the problem of is the fourth goal of the human life, and this is called quest for liberation. And so having said that you do not know who you are, so the whole definition of karma stands on very shaky ground, because you assumed that you know who you are, and on the basis of that assumption as to who you are, you said that it is cause and effect, and you send out some energy into the cosmos, and then there is an impacting return energy which comes back to you, and you call that karma. But the individual itself is an illusion. So when we have gone that far to learn the ultimate lesson that the individual itself is illusion, then karma actually must become redefined. And we are not ready to give that redefinition of karma yet. So we will come to that later in these satsangs, and then come to that free will and fate. Now you have the divine will is already there. It is enshrined in every human life, the divine will. And the divine will, but you stake a claim that you have a very strong will, and you kind of convert the divine will, which is given to you or which is loaned to you, and you say it's my will, but actually it's the divine will. And that divine will can be in small measure or it can be in Himalayan measure. Now, if it's in Himalayan measure, huge quantities of divine will, then you are a person with a very strong determination. You are a very stubborn person, and you'll be able to go very far, warding off all obstacles, and you'll be able to achieve a great deal because of your tenacity, which comes from your strong will. Whereas a person who has got a weak will, because the divine endowment was weak in his case, in that body and in that consciousness, it was weak. So that person will not have your tenacity, will not have your stubbornness, and therefore will not have your higher achievement, which was part of your divine architecture. You had that higher achievement. So there is a human will, which if we try to uncover it, it's actually not our will. It is the divine will, which is enshrined in the body and which is enshrined in the consciousness, and which is part of what I have been calling as the divine architecture. And the divine architecture has got a divine conspiracy which goes against you, which hurts you. And the divine architecture also has a divine patronage which blesses you and which pampers you. Both are there. So wherever the will is enshrined centrally, very strongly, then it's a case of divine patronage. It's not a case of divine conspiracy. And it's the handiwork of the divine. And that's there for you as a limited body and as a limited consciousness. It's available for you. Those blessings are available, and you can act in any way you like. Now question is fate binding? Now, you cannot give a yes-no answer. That would be too absurd and that would be too naive. And because if you talk to 1,000 people, make them sit in front of you and talk to every one of them case by case, then you honestly ask their verdict. What is your verdict on free will versus a binding destiny? Some people will say, I never found my destiny to be binding and obstructive, and I achieved whatever I wanted to achieve in my life. And then you talk to 10 others, and the 10 others will say, oh my God, my fate was very binding. I was in chains, my hands were tied, my mouth was tied, my feet was tied, I had no power, I couldn't achieve things. So some people will tell one kind of story, some other people will tell another kind of story. So it's a customized thing. It varies from individual to individual, but everybody has a quantum of free, what you call free will, which is a very bad term. I don't like to use the term because it is borrowed divine will. It is your will which is borrowed from the divine. That's what you call free will. So you have a share of that borrowed divine will, which is obviously a divine patronage, which is obviously a divine blessing. And then you have also a destiny which is crippling and which is binding, which denies you freedom. So you cannot achieve some things. You cannot break your chains. You cannot throw off the shackles. So partly you're bound and partly you have that freedom. And some people will have more of the freedom. Some people will have less of the freedom. Some people will have more of the willpower. Some will have less of the willpower. So it's got immense spectral diversity, and we've got to go case by case. So there is no uniform law, because it's completely, strictly speaking, there are no individuals and there is only the divine, and the divine is acting in two theaters, the theater of the body and in the theater of consciousness. It's enacting two tragicomedies. One tragicomedy is unfolding in the theater of the body. What happens to the body? Is the body pampered or is the body kicked and chained? And another tragicomedy is happening in the consciousness, the way the consciousness works, how it slashes back and forth. Is there too much of anger? Is there less of anger? Is there too much of love? Is there less of love? Is there less of intelligence, more of intelligence? Everything, the whole thing. So the divine is orchestrating these two dramas in the two theaters, and we've got to understand that for our greater peace. And you've got to not believe anybody, not believe me. No, you've got to discover the answer yourself. And you will discover the moment the mind is voided, the moment the mind has fallen silent, many things you will discover just by keeping quiet. Not even by actively thinking. No, not by thinking. No, but by being quiet. So we can move to the next question. Don or Ricardo, whoever, Sandra.
Yes, Shankarji, namaste. There's a question from Ana Victoria Cruz, and she's asking that this will or divine architecture can change or modify?
Definitely, it changes on a day-to-day basis, and it changes with each dasha and with each sub-period. You see a different color, a different hue of the divine architecture. And we know that from our day-to-day life, you know, that yesterday was different and today is different and tomorrow is going to be yet more different. So you know that every day of our life and every month of our life and every decade of our life, it's a changing scenario, because the divine architecture is not a fixed thing. It's constantly moving, it's constantly changing. It's like the pages of a book turning, and you seeing different things, you experiencing different things, both sufferings and also joyful things. Definitely, it's a very big book. Of course.
So Guruji, I have a question.
Please.
From Srinivas Bhatt, Guruji. having understood the perspective of Krishnamurti as you explained, I feel that the actual role of a true spiritual master is to ultimately liberate the student from the teacher and help the student become his own teacher in the most authentic manner. Is this the sense of true spirituality itself?
Of course, that is the real essence of it. And yeah, because freedom is the destination. Freedom is where you have to go, and that is why Krishnamurti. So what Krishnamurti is saying is very significant. That if you look at a certain part of your life, you can look at all our lives. Many of us, we have been traveling together for many decades. Madhuji and myself, for example, Lakshmi Kumarji, Ricardoji, we are all traveling together, a very long journey. And you know that there is a part of the journey where you have to work with the master, where you have to work with the guru. And then comes a phase where you have to start discovering things for yourself. Now, if you are a kind of in a box of belief or in a box of faith, then no discovery can happen, because belief and faith, what do they give you? Belief and faith basically give you solace. That is, they give you comfort, because you're in such a bad shape that what you need at that time is only comfort. So they give you that comfort. But then as children grow up, as small children grow up, then every small child would like to become independent, free of the father and mother, or not? Tell me. It's a very natural thing, because the part of flowering, part of growing up. So even after you're grown up, you don't hang on to your dad and your mom. You don't. Yep. You like to stand on your own feet, and you like to help your father and mother. In the same way, there comes a time when you have to stand on your own feet and you have to think for yourself. Now that is called moksha. That dimension of the spiritual life is called moksha. And for different people, it happens at different times. And if you are very passive, then you may not get this freedom. But if you are very serious, then you will know that at some point, you've got to stake a claim for this freedom. Otherwise, you may never get it. And why won't you get it? Because you didn't ask for it. You were passive. You didn't ask for it.
Thank you, Guruji.
Guruji, I have an question.
Please.
Sri J. Krishnamurti's teachings does not talk too much about the divine or God. However, you seem to be marrying his teachings with the divine. For seekers who do not have traditional, let's say, God-based religious background, say Buddhism, for example, if somebody belongs to Buddhism, where would they fit into Amanaska Yoga? Or otherwise, if someone is an atheist or a Buddhist, and they're drawn toward the J. Krishnamurti part of Amanaska Yoga, how will they reconcile with the divine part of your teachings?
See, as we have discussed, this is an extremely important and very good question. A question we have to go into. Now you see, this Amanaska Yoga, what is it actually? It means that it has to fit you. And whether you're a Buddhist, or whether you are trying to follow the teachings of Adi Shankara, or whether you're trying to follow the teachings of Ramana Maharshi, or Nisargadatta Maharaj, or any other serious teaching. And you know that in Buddhism, they talk of no mind. Zen is all about no mind. You know that, right? You know that very well. So, and the whole of yoga is yogas chitta vritti nirodha. That is the definition of yoga. That is the first sutra of Maharshi Patanjali. Yoga is the complete cessation of mental activities. So this is the real essence of Amanaska Yoga, and you have to go behind the truth. Now, in going behind the truth, you will automatically suffer a differentiation from what I'm saying. Like I have suffered a differentiation from what the Master Krishnamurti has said. So in that way, you have to work out this truth in your own life. Now you will work this out if you are very serious and if you're very dedicated and if you're given your life for the truth. But if you're not given your life for the truth and you're only a hanger-on, then you're never going to work this out. So you will be a superficial devotee. You will be what we usually use the name follower for that. You will be a follower, and then nothing will be yours. Nothing will be authentically discovered, and that will be very sad. Now you got to work this out. And in the Hindu tradition, for example, there is a principle by name Adhikari Bheda Nyaya. Adhikari Bheda Nyaya. Adhikari means seeker. Now, every seeker has got a special divine architecture. Therefore, the path of one seeker will never be the same as the path of another seeker. No. How can it be? It's absurd. Because you are differently architectured by the divine, and some is differently architectured. So each of you will have to work this out. Now, if you are merely doing a repetitive practice to cling on, so you go to an ashram, you are given a repetitive practice. Do this for half an hour every day. Do this for half an hour in the morning. Do this for half an hour in the evening. Now, if you do all that, then you're not yet a mumukshu because you're not begun to cut your own path. I am here to inspire you to walk into the unknown, where there are no ready-made paths for any of you, like it was for me. Nobody gave me a ready-made path. My Guru, Sri Bhagavan, his teaching for me was only one line. So what was that? If you don't internalize, if you don't look within, then your life becomes a dog's life. Your life becomes a dog's life. That's the only teaching I got. The rest of it is my hard work. Okay? Now, either you do the hard work if you're a very sincere person, or if you are completely caught in the web of materialism, then the Guru's Upadesha goes to dogs. And you don't go anywhere. You become a lovely hypocrite. You will be paying allegiance to your Guru, and you will be a mechanical robo. And if I stop you and ask you, what is it that you have discovered? You won't be able to answer my question, because the truth is you discovered nothing in your life. Absolutely nothing. You're only following, because your Guru and your religion, they are only serving to make the self secure. That is what happens in Artha and Kama. Now in Dharma and Moksha, the attention shifted from Artha and Kama to the self. It has to be shifted to the self. And you start looking at the self for the first time. So this is not about solace. This is about salvation. And it's not a question about following anybody. It's not a question about following Shankara. Shankara is not interested in anybody following him. Shankara is asking you to stand on your own feet. That is the harsh truth. If you're serious, and there are many serious seekers in the world who are actually doing that hard work. Lots of serious seekers in the world, they're doing that serious work, hard work. They're doing it. Because they're probably disenchanted by following different religions and different traditions. And then finally they said, no, let me figure this out. And they're doing it. And so this Amanaska Yoga is a kind of inspiration for them to dare to work out their salvation. And starting from scratch. Starting from scratch. So either you are a mumukshu or you are, as Bhagavan Krishna says in the Gita, kama kami, full of desires. Artharthi. So completely engrossed in Artha and Kama. So when will the day come when you will walk out of Artha and Kama? Will the day come at all? Tell me. That is the question. Will it come at all?
Thank you.
Yes, the next question, Guruji, Ramanandaji.
Namaste, Guruji.
Namaste.
Guruji, question is from Deepesh ji. Namaste, Shankaraji. My question is about the formative years of Sri J. Krishnamurti. I have gone through some speeches by Sri J. Krishnamurti. He does not refer back to any author or text. Is it known what is it that he studied? What is the sadhana he did during his formative years that set him free and made him see things as they are, and then speak on things accordingly? Thank you.
Very good question. You see, we have to remember that they could not fit. They identified Krishnamurti. Bishop Leadbeater identified him as the vehicle for Lord Maitreya. And so the vehicle for Lord Maitreya, will he get a doctorate from Cambridge University? Please tell me. Please tell me. Start thinking, start thinking. Start appreciating my language. You think the vehicle for Lord Maitreya will be so brainy that he'll get doctorate from Oxford and Cambridge and Harvard? No answer from any one of you? Huh? Krishnamurti could not pass the London matriculation. He failed the London matriculation 3 times. And Krishnamurti's mind was empty from the very beginning. It's so empty that Leadbeater was actually shocked, because he said he's completely vacant and he's dreamy, and they thought also that he's mentally not all right. Because the mind, so later on people asked Krishnamurti, can you say something about yourself? Then he said about his childhood, the mind is completely vacant, it's no mind. And you think that no mind will have the goal of studying some subjects? It's already the final destination. So, now because it's the final destination, and he happens to be in the final destination, so he's in the destination, so everything becomes clear to him. And whatever becomes clear to him, what is in opposition to that? The opposition is what society is dumping on him. What the Theosophical Society is dumping on him, the messianic role. He is told that he is a Messiah. So he is told that he is a Messiah. He has to live up to something. He's given some grandiose ideals. And Krishnamurti is in a state of unknowing. And all through life he has been in a state of unknowing. And therefore, Krishnamurti was already there right at the beginning. So there is no question of any sadhana. No question of any sadhana. And then, because so much was dumped on him by society, and he was supposed to be a religious leader, and he had to deal with those very demanding things which society dumped on him. Theosophical Society. Now, in dealing with that, he came upon this self-knowing. He discovered the whole thing by just being quiet. And so that is the teaching which is given to the world. That is the teaching which goes to the world.
So in that sense, Guruji, just like Master Krishnamurti had the challenge of the Theosophical Society, and he had to deal with that. In that, his growth happened.
Right.
In the same manner, can we say that each one of us, we also have our own challenges, our own questions, our own struggles, and through that struggle, that we come upon a new truth, and that will be our truth, Guruji.
That's it. That's it. You got it. You got it. That's it. So we've got our share, the same thing. So society and the world coming on us. And so long as you try to adjust and accommodate to that, you will get nowhere. You may become a better citizen, a so-called better husband, a so-called better father, a so-called better spiritual teacher, but you'll miss the bus. Okay?
So this should be our challenge, must be our sadhana, our challenge must be our learning, our crisis.
Day-to-day learning. Day-to-day learning. Day-to-day learning. And we've not yet begun, actually. We are just kind of, we are still in the countdown. We're not yet begun. And I want to ask Dipesh ji to read the 3 volumes of Krishnamurti's biography in 3 volumes. Got to read it very diligently, just to know what he went through. He went through very, very difficult times. And you've got to throw it off. And
so that is the challenge, Guruji. That is the challenge people have, is that we always want to know somebody great, what they have done, so we can follow them, or we want to understand that, so we can understand what we can do. So this is the struggle with the mind, Guruji.
Right.
We are always trying to follow someone.
Of course. Right. Of course. That whole, that struggle should be stopped in the beginning itself. Not stopping the struggle after 5 years or 10 years and just give up that struggle. And you think that when you give up the struggle, you will come to the pavement. That's what you think, because that whole thinking is quite rotten. The thinking is born of trauma and attachment to survival and a very shabby understanding of life. But when you actually stop struggling, then life becomes sweeter. Life becomes sweeter. And learning starts happening. And the whole thing, the whole question is, put the question to yourself. What have you discovered? Try to be honest with yourself. Is there, Krishnamurti was speaking in Bombay, probably the year 1976 or 1976 or 77. And I happened to be there in that public talk. And I was in the JJ School of Arts campus, he was speaking. And Krishnamurti started his talk like this. And he's always hard hitting. He said, in this country, tell me, have you discovered one thing for yourself? One little thing have you discovered for yourself? Very hard hitting. And Krishnamurti was speaking at the Indian Institute of Technology in Chennai, which is the 5 eminent engineering institutions of the country. And that year I was a student at the IIT, and Krishnamurti, all the professors were sitting in front of him. They were the front line. All the professors, including the director of IIT. The director is sitting in front of him, the director, the deputy director, everybody. And Krishnamurti began his talk like this. You 13th hand technologists. That's the way it goes.
We have the next question, Guruji.
Please.
Yeah, Chandrasekhar asks, and this goes back to last week, we learned that we have to empty our mind and be prepared for radical changes in that life that divine architecture would lead you to. That in itself is radical for a person leading a blessed life, and also feels satisfied with what the divine has blessed. Now, adding JK's teaching that God is a human creation and does not exist, takes this radical to another level. How do you suggest this, a blessed mumukshu, to desert or destroy the whole platform on which one's life has been built and seek self-realization when I don't know what this new divine, world divine is going to lead me to?
Right. The fear-stricken self is speaking. It is asking this question. It is in fear. It is in fear of losing the wonderful empire it has so successfully built in life. So now, my reply is the following. Ask yourself first, Chandrasekhar ji, whether you are at one of the portals, whether you're a candidate for the spiritual life. Amanaska Yoga is very serious. It's only in the sphere of dharma and moksha. So, are you at one of the portals? Are you a yogi? Are you a mumukshu? Are you a seeker who has got a purva janma samskara? Or have you had a humongous misfortune in life? Or have you crossed the milestone of 60 or 65? Or have you become so wise that every one of my words will be self-evident to you as though you yourself are speaking? Now, if you're not at any one of these four portals, then this Amanaska Yoga is not for you. It is only for people who are searching for answers. It is not for people who are happy. And I'm not interested in disturbing happy people from their happiness.
No window shopping, Guruji.
Yeah, no window shopping. So please understand. So I've taken the pains to specify the portals. So do you have a candidature to enter into the portals? Now, if you don't have a candidature, and if there is no urgency, and if there is no calling, then you can happily continue to live in Artha and Kama till you get the next major thunderbolt of a knock.
Shall I ask the next question, Guruji?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
We have a question which I'm sure is on many of our Spanish speakers' minds. The question is, where does Christianity fall in these teachings of seeking the self, the truth?
Okay. I am not, first of all, I must confess that I am not a Christian. I'm speaking as a Hindu, but I have a good understanding of Christianity. I just happen to have. And I'm acquainted with the work of the most authentic voice of Roman Catholic Christianity, namely Bernadette Roberts. And her entire life is about the self. So Bernadette Roberts said very significantly that the whole of life, the totality of life is divine except the self. Now this is a very portentous statement. You got to start thinking about it. But however potent a statement is, nothing seems to trouble you. Nothing seems to disturb you. You're so beautifully entrenched in Artha and Kama that no question, no statement by any seer, by any prophet, by any religion, it's all water off a duck's back. So now in every religion, there are people who are speaking very, very serious things, like St. John of the Cross, speaking very, very serious things. The importance of psychologically dying, which Krishnamurti speaks about. It's one of the very important things in Krishnamurti's work. The importance of dying, the self dying to something. Now, if you are in shallow waters, and you're very happy to be in shallow waters, because in shallow waters, there is respectability for you. And you can tell everybody, I'm going to church, I'm a Christian. You can tell all this. But only you know how shallow you are. And you may not even know that. Because nobody will come and tell you one fine day that you are very shallow. Nobody will dare tell you that. Krishnamurti will tell you that, but nobody will tell you that. I will tell you that. But you are impervious to anything, whatever anybody tells. So I am addressing this Amanaska Yoga to people who are at the four portals and who have a general consensus with me that sorrow is ubiquitous in life. It's present everywhere. And you don't say that there is no sorrow in my life, but that you say, yes, there is a great deal of sorrow. Then there is common ground between you and me, and then we can talk. But if you tell me that I don't have sorrow in your life, then I must be wise enough not to waste my time with you, and I must be wise enough to tell you goodbye. We'll meet after 10 years. So there has to be common ground, because this is a very finely nuanced teaching. It is in the sphere of dharma and moksha. It is only for the four categories of people who are standing at the four portals. It is not for everybody. You know that very well, Sandraji. And there's a lot in Christianity, and there's a lot of beautiful things in Christianity. And I'm shocked to find that you Christians, you are not studying your scriptures. You are, that's a curse on you, actually. From my point of view, it's your curse. You're cursed people. Because you've thrown away your religion. And if you meet a very good Christian, you will know what your loss is. But probably you're not meeting these people. These good Christians who are truly pious, who are truly honest, who have a sense of the divine, who are virtuous in life. I'm sure lots of people are there like that. But obviously you're not meeting them. And so the fact that you're vacuous in your religion is not brought home to by anybody. Because you're moving in just those materialistic circles where nobody will tell you that you're a religious vacuum. Religious vacuum, not in the sense that you're affiliating, you're not affiliating to the religion, no, but in the spiritual sense. In the spiritual sense. So you got to do that homework. There's a lot of work in Christianity which you can do. But you will not understand a word of your religion. Why? Because the religion, all the writings, all the gospels in the Bible, they are the work of the prophets. Yes or no? Sandraji? Right. Now, the prophets, do they have their minds clouded or are their minds empty? Tell me. Is empty. No, unless your mind becomes empty, you can't understand religion. But because your minds are occupied and you don't understand religion, you will kick off your religion and you will be the poorer for it. You will be the poorer for it. Because you cannot understand your religion so long as your mind is not voided. Because your religion is the creation of enlightened sages, of people who are connected to the divine, and you can connect only when the mind is voided. And therefore, when are you going to do this? Next life? That's what they're saying in India. Got to do it now.
Thank you, Guruji.
Yeah, that's the whole satsangs are for that. How to void the mind. How to void the mind. And we are thinking that this voiding of the mind is only for the people at the four portals. But actually it's for the whole of humanity. Because leave alone completely voiding the mind. If you completely void the mind, then consciousness may become so empty, like for Krishnamurti, that you may become non-functional. non-functional because it's completely, totally voided. Okay. But even if it is cleaned up to such an extent that lot of cobwebs are removed, and it is partially voided, and there's no cluttering of consciousness, there is no constant cacophony, then it is still very wonderful. And you got to begin somewhere. You got to begin there to go far. And the whole satsang is for that, is to learn that, and learn that not from me, no. So you got to understand my state. Now I got into that empty mind, okay? Now a lot of people asked me, did you go and talk to Krishnamurti? They asked me. Now some of you may know that my family, my mother has had a very direct connection to Krishnamurti. But there is no desire to go and speak to Krishnamurti. Can you imagine what that means? That means I'm so full within myself. I'm so full within myself. A lot of people are clamoring. They want to go and meet Krishnamurti. They want to spend 5 minutes. They want to they take photograph. They want to touch his feet, do all that. Then you'll put it on your Facebook and things like that. You got to get there. And you can get there only if you're interested. If you're not interested, and if you don't have a problem in life, then you cannot get here at all. You must have a humongous problem in life. Then you are the most blessed person. Now, contrary to what all of you think that if you have a problem in life, it's very unfortunate. Now, I consider when somebody has got a big problem in life, is the chosen person. He's the most blessed person. Because that person has a very good chance of passing this exam. Because that's what happened to me. My life was difficult at a certain point, and so I became a candidate. And you think it's very bad. The sorrow is very bad. But I'm telling you that that's the best thing that can happen to you. Best thing. Your failures are the best things. Your misfortunes, they're the best things. Because they will convert you from being an inauthentic human being to an authentic human being, from a dull human being to a very intelligent human being. Without that, it's not happening.
I have a question, Guruji,
Namaste.
from Javier Fernandez. He says that when we are a true serious seekers and we go deep inside to inquire in ourselves, sometimes Ananda and the contact with the divine comes, but sometimes it comes Durga. I think it's suffering or pain. How to deal with that? This duality.
Very wonderful question. Wonderful. This is the kind of question I want. This is exactly the people I want to connect to. I want to connect to these people. I want to connect to these seekers. Now that's the whole point. You see, Gabriel Ji, the Buddha talked about sorrow, and that's the essence of Buddhism. Sensitivity to sorrow and awakening to sorrow. That's the whole essence of it. And Christianity is very sensitive to sorrow. And all religions are concerned about sorrow. But the younger religions like Buddhism and Christianity, they are intensely aware of sorrow and addressing the problem. So now, this sorrow is like cancer. It's like cancer in thought and feeling. Now, I'm saying something to shock you, but I don't know if you will be shocked. I'm saying that this cancer can be ended, provided you are serious. If you're serious, it can end. But then you need a misfortune. Now, without a misfortune, you're not coming near this. You're not going to, first of all, agree that there is sorrow in life. And your pleasure will intoxicate you to such an extent that you will gloss over sorrow, and you will say, it's okay, I'm very happy. Sometimes sorrow comes, otherwise I'm very happy. you will say things like that. But I am talking about the eradication of sorrow to such an extent that you and sorrow do not meet in this lifetime. That you can't meet. It's over. It's finished. And for that, for the complete eradication of that suffering, you have to be serious, or can you be casual?
Serious.
You've got to be serious. So I find that by and large, people are not serious because they have the distraction of the material life, tremendous distraction of the material life, wanting to be successful in life. So that's why I said 4 portals. Now do you understand why I constantly keep harping on the 4 portals? So if you're at one of the portals and you're saying that there is suffering and you want to really address that, then you're in the right place. You're in the right satsang. You're in the right satsang.
Shall I ask another question, Guruji?
Please, please.
Spanish participant, her name is Constanza Vergara. It says, considering the case of Krishnamurti, what is the relationship between divine architecture, divine conspiracy, and divine patronage? In his case, his design announced that he would be a great teacher. However, his personal exploration, that divine conspiracy in course, took him to dissolve the structure of being placed in the position of being a teacher. That the gesture of liberty is the key to the teaching in a way that it seems as a platform to make public his teachings, even though he constantly fought against doing the role that he was assigned. So what is the question is, what is the relationship between our purpose and where are we going? What are between our talents and our different positions in life? That is a question.
No, is the question concerning Krishnamurti or is the question concerning oneself?
I guess the way I would translate the question is, given that Krishnamurti was on this path and he questioned it and decided to be true to himself and dissolve the Theosophic Society. In our own lives, how should we go about
okay, good.
Where should we go, given our talents and where we have been placed in life?
Good. Okay, understood the question. Okay. So you see, Sandraji, if a religious teacher, as is happening in all the world religions, tells the people who are attached to the church or the temple that to follow me, then everybody is ready to follow. Now, Krishnamurti's genre of teaching is entirely different. This is to awaken. This is not to make you follow. And this is not to offer solace, not to offer security, not to offer an association, a social association, a religious association, which may be the kind of thing that the self is actually looking for. The self is looking for affiliation to a certain group, affiliation to a certain religion, and affiliation with a certain master. And because the self finds itself insecure, so in its view, what is the self looking at? The self wants to look at a master. The self wants to look at an association of people, a group of people, a religion, and then the self wants to attach itself to that. Now, we are not talking of that. We are talking of awareness of sorrow, understanding sorrow through self-knowing, and freedom from the self and freedom from sorrow, which is a moksha question. And so the whole thing is in the moksha sphere. Therefore, unless you find yourself at one of the 4 portals I mentioned, what I'm talking in these 3 satsangs and what I'm going to talk from now onwards will not make sense. You've got to understand what I'm talking. Now, if you're not able to understand what I'm talking, if none of this makes sense, then it means that you are looking for something else which you may not get here. Because this is very serious. This is very serious. But I find that there are a lot of people in the West who are very serious seekers. That's my discovery. In fact, they're more serious than seekers in India. And they're trying many things and they're not satisfied. And they want to apply their minds and they want to apply their hearts and they want to see whether they will understand or not. And this is the way of understanding. This is not a belief. This is not a faith. This is understanding. Understanding for what? Understanding for your greater wellness. Understanding for inner fulfillment. Fulfillment not for the self. You will get the fulfillment when the self is gone. So long as the self is there, there won't be fulfillment. So this is a serious thing, and you have to know more about it. And and if you're a seeker, then the question arises: what have you been seeking, and what have you learned? So Nisargadatta Maharaj used to always ask the people who come to talk to him in his satsang, what have you been seeking, and what have you learned? That's what Maharaj asks. What have you been seeking, and what have you learned? And then they will say, I went to this guru, I went to that guru, I am from this religion, I am from that religion. And Maharaj always used to say that when you have gone to all the masters, come finally to me. That is what Maharaj used to say. And very, very serious. So when will one look inward? Or even in the religious life, are we all going to look only outward, never looking inward? Is that going to be a lot? So you've got to, if you're interested in Krishnamurti, then you can read. Not read means not plunge into reading the 3 volumes of the biography. No. Read here and there. And you've got to begin your journey of discovery. Your authentic journey of discovery, not belief.
Namaste. Dear Shankara, thank you so much for a wonderful satsang today. Very good questions from the attendees. And thank you all for being here. We look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you, Dawn. And thank you all the conveners and all the attendees. Namaste. Namaste.